Hi class, my name is Ryan Hill and I'm going to demonstrate one of my worksheets that I designed for you guys today. So one of my objectives in my lesson plan was for my students, which are primarily first graders, to be able to describe within general terms like the parts of a tree or a plant. So I created a worksheet where we could reinforce their uh, knowledge about where these parts are located on the plant or on the tree with a little bit of like a creative exercise before we got into a more formal structured lesson plan. So this worksheet is all about creating your own tree, and I know it might not be that easy to see on your on the screen, but what I have here on my whiteboard is I have the name line across the top. I have this line with some ticks, which generally represents some dirt, and then a descriptive area at the bottom. So the lesson would go along, or the instructor would go along with the lesson and explain as they're going. They would call out a structure from the plant or a part of the plant that they would want their students to then create in their own unique way. With the intent being not necessarily everyone's plant looking the same, of course, but with everyone being able to identify, for instance, that the roots go into the dirt and that the stem or the trunk generally grows from there and provides a shape or structure or rigidity to the plant. Uh, and so your lesson might start off with, telling the class at this point to draw a root system, and I'm going to draw my root system in blue up here, and my roots are going to come out of my plant into the earth here. And if you wanted to get even further into that, you could even have them start perhaps even with like drawing the seed of the plant. So as they draw that, you can go around and observe, critique if you want, and then moving on to the next part of the plant structure. So I'm using trees for this particular one, but you can leave it as vague or specific as you want in your own design. So then I would say something along the lines of, all right, so at this time, like let's all draw the trunk of our tree. It can be a straight and tall trunk, or it can be a twisty trunk. It can have one branch, or it can have hundreds of branches. So I'll have them, draw their trunk. And for mine, I'm just going to do a very classic trunk with a couple of branches coming off here. So I have a very classic trunk on my plant now, and you can even let them take time to color it in, add some details like perhaps maybe a nook or a hole in their plant in their trunk that an animal might reside in or have created. And then you're going to move on to the next structure. All right, draw the leaves of your plant or the needles or both. And it can be as creative or as mundane as the students want to make it. They can have generally a blob, or they can do individual leaves. I would encourage them to draw just individual leaves on their plant, so it can be kind of a unique you know structure of each leaf, and then getting detailed when you're talking about the veins in there and how you'd want them to demonstrate that knowledge to a whatever degree. And then capping it off with just coloring in parts of their plant, whatever colors they want. They can make it like the trunk of the tree where it's pink, red, and blue. They can make it very classic green or red and yellow for the fall. And then ask them to add an environment for their tree. So where is their tree found? Is it a snowy environment? Is it a hot desert environment? Is it on the beach? And so they can start filling in this background portion here, adding in the sun, and then going on to do something like, all right, so mine might be found in the mountains. So behind my tree, I'm going to draw up, maybe a mountain range back here. And then I want my mountains to be on the beach. So over here on the side, I'm going to have the ocean coming up. And the animals that are found there, so there's going to be some bears around my tree. And you can just get really crazy with this and really fun. And then at the very end, as an exercise in being able to articulate the observation skills in a science lesson, because that's going to be important to a later part of my activities, which is a full-on lab experiment where we kind of observe photosynthesis. They're going to be tasked with collecting observations by drawing and then being able to describe the changes that they see in the experiment. So this is a great exercise before you get into that activity to kind of gauge where your students are at and their ability to observe and then articulate what they're seeing. So at the very bottom, you might add in, I have mine as describe your tree. You can do it in any manner you want. So I'd say, my tree has pointy leaves. My tree is tall with several branches. And you can kind of guide this discussion by having them explain the types of leaves on their tree, the shape of their tree's trunk, the environment their tree is in, the animals that live in or around their tree, and you can even go as deep as my tree. I mean, I'm not an educator by trade, so depending on the depth of knowledge, my tree is deciduous or my tree is coniferous. You can really take this experiment further, and then it's kind of a capstone. Have them name their tree. It can be goofy. It can be serious. Uh, Let them do that, and then have them share and describe their tree in front of the class. I think that's a really neat way for them to kind of share an exciting thing. Kids love to create. I love watching my children create drawings, and I have no idea what's on the paper, but they have a very clear understanding of what they put on the paper, and listening to them explain that and seeing the excitement that they have in their voices. They're kind of describing this plant or this tree with these animals around it and sharing with their class the name of their tree, which is probably going to be something silly and everyone's going to giggle. That's a really exciting way to kind of segue into a lesson on uh, plant or tree structure and its function in our everyday environment. So again, this is just a good warm-up activity, a good way to get the creative juices flowing, and also kind of to assess your students' ability to observe and be able to articulate the parts of a tree or plant before moving on to some other activities that I outline in my lesson plan, such as the photosynthesis experiment, complete with observation and with the vocabulary associated with parts of a tree or plant as we discuss the process of photosynthesis as well as you can with a first grade classroom. Thank you for your time.